We're here for an extremely exciting talk by Eddie Tenney. Just a bit of background on Eddie. He's been in the game in the Agile workspace for over 20 years. Now working as an enterprise Agile coach. He's also a conference speaker. He's also a conference organizer. Super excited for this talk. But also just wanted to quickly introduce myself. I'm not Nabil, as it says over there. We're one of three organizers, hosts of AA, and this is my first one for AA, so very much looking forward to it. My name is actually Nasimba, you can call me Simba, and I'm an independent Agile practitioner for about 10 years, and also I've had the pleasure of working with Eddie as well, so even more excited for this particular talk. And also just to quickly introduce AA itself for those of you that are new, and of course to have reminders for those that are not. The kind of context around AA was all around balancing the trends that were being seen and currently being seen around the Agile industry, peddling expensive frameworks, certifications, pushing one-size-fits-all approach, which we certainly believe goes against the original spirit and intention of the actual intention of the Agile Manifesto. So at AA, there are 13 principles. Please feel free to look at them afterwards, but they very much serve as a reminder for us in view of what it actually means to be in service of agility, and also to put the client's best interest and context ahead of any frameworks. So talks today and previous talks and in the future are very much around three things: learning, sharing, growing, and doing this as a community, and really, continue to drive that forward. So that was a little introduction, and also just wanted to finish off with a few ground rules. One, please do stay muted whilst this talk is going ahead, but please do use the chat facility. So if there's any questions that you have or anything like that, do use it. I'll try my best to interject if there's good points during the talk, but there's a very good chunk at the end for us to have conversations and everything. So do use a chat facility so that you don't forget the questions in moment, so that at the end we'll pick it up. But if there are any ones that nicely kind of go within the talk, we'll certainly pick up on those as well. So with that, I'll hand over to Eddie to introduce the talk and any other introductions that you have before jumping in.
Okay, just bear with me for a second while I share my screen.
No problem.
Go. Give me a thumbs up if you can see. There we go. Great. You can hear me okay? Fantastic. Okay, just all right. So yeah, thanks, Nasimba. I think it's I didn't know all of that background to the to AA, this AA, not the other AA. And it really syncs quite well with this talk and a lot of the stuff I'm going to talk about, actually. And I had this pipelined, before I even learned about this this agnostic agile group. So I do consider myself agnostic, and we'll get into a lot of that in the talk, hopefully. Just on the I think Nasimba's kind of highlighted the approach that we'd probably take. In general, I do prefer a conversational kind of presentation. But when we're on Zoom, it does tend to get a bit trickier to balance that off. So yeah, I mean, if there's Nasimba, we'll keep an eye on the chat. If there's any relevant question and a suitable point to chime in, then we can get to it there and then. But if not, we'll have plenty of time at the end, and you can always contact me afterwards if there's anything else you want to follow up on. Okay. So there's a little bit about me. Yeah, so just additional to what Nasimba's outlined already. Lean Agile Brighton, if anyone's aware of Brighton, south coast of the UK, that's where pretty much roughly where I'm based right now, and I have been for a while. I'm co-founder of Lean Agile Brighton. We're in our 5th year now. A really nice, small, friendly conference on the south coast one day. If you ever get a chance to check it out, I'll definitely encourage it. We've always got a really international standard of like top class speaker lineup. So we've had a lot of the the so-called greats, the good and the greats have been at this conference speaking, so it's always really high quality. October 10th this year, if you're interested, go and check out leanagilebrighton.co.uk. There's still tickets on sale. That's the plug done. Okay, yeah. So as Masimba said, I know to look at me, you wouldn't think it, but I have been in the game for a long time. It's just a testament to the joy I get from working with Agile folks that it's keeping me young, right? But I started off with XP. That was, I feel kind of blessed to have had that as my introductory kind of weapon of choice, I suppose, or kind of my baptism into Agile ways of working. I learned an absolute ton from the process side of things and the tech side of things, which has stood to me for the rest of my career, really. So any fellow XPers out there, we're part of the same clan. I'll tell you a little bit more about my journey to lead into this. Okay, so this is this is not anything mysterious at all. This is just a pie chart for the sake of creating a pie chart of years I've spent working in various methodologies. Okay, so I'm like 20 years working in Agile now, as I said, right? So I feel blessed actually as well that I did experience waterfall in earnest at the very beginning of my career. So that's 2 years there in waterfall, because even though I wasn't aware of it at the time, I was fresh out of university. I saw a lot of things that I kind of was confused by in terms of how my organization was delivering software. They were doing really big projects, investing an awful lot of money, and overlapping lots of different phases, and getting to the end of projects, or getting to deadlines and not having anything to deliver, and then scrapping the project. So there was massive investment going down the drain. I was more interested at the time in learning my tech skills because I was a developer. But it didn't kind of seem right, but I didn't know any different. But in hindsight, I kind of really value having had that experience, because I can compare with how not to do things. And actually kind of the reasons why Agile came about in the first place really resonate, because I've experienced them firsthand. So there's a bit of a mix there in terms of XP, DSDM, Scrum, Lean and Kanban, and SAFe, which we're going to talk about a bit more depth later on. One of the reasons why I'm putting this up here is just kind of show, like kind of I'm not dedicated to one framework or to one methodology. I've had experience across a few different ones, and I think that is a really important thing, probably for this group, right, as well, because of the whole agnostic kind of approach. Is there's bits in each of these ways of working that's good, and there's bits that are maybe less preferable to some people. I like to pick and choose. I like to kind of think about what's the problem we're trying to solve, and then picking the right tool for the job, which hopefully resonates with an agnostic Agile community. Just kind of talk you through again. So I've mentioned about the waterfall side of things. Again, that was completely alien to me. I didn't really understand, methodologies at that point, but it didn't feel right. Then I went in, my organization at the time, their response was to, we're very fortunate that somebody chose XP and ThoughtWorks consultants to help us embed that way of working. And it was mind-blowing. It was like kind of, I learned so much stuff in a short period of time about agile ways of working, agile engineering practices, all that really great stuff, and how to ship products in a really short time frame, how to increment and how to iterate. So for me, that was like a real kind of lucky break, I think, in terms of getting on that wave at that point in time. Now, at some point, we couldn't afford to pay for the consultants anymore, so we moved on. They moved on, and so did the organization. And what happened was the project managers came back out of the woodwork once the consultants had left. So then we adopted DSDM. I'm not sure if anyone here might have experience with DSDM, but it definitely felt more to me at the time. I'm no expert on DSDM, but at the time it felt more like adding more project overhead and management and governance overhead back onto something that was quite lean and not extreme, but definitely focused and targeted on software delivery. Let's put it that way. And I know that there's an element of that that is needed in large organizations in terms of governance, but this just felt a little bit like a step backwards on that journey for me. Moving on to different organizations, I started to experience Scrum. Became a Scrum Master. I definitely had some kind of things that didn't resonate very well with me when I started to work in Scrum. It was like it felt very familiar. It felt similar to XP. And if anyone's got any experience of both of these, you'll find that actually the process of XP and the process of Scrum very, very similar. They borrowed from each other and they grew up together. But the thing that I didn't really, that did raise the biggest question marks for me was around, Scrum didn't have really an opinion or any advice for people on agile engineering practices, which for me felt like kind of a big miss. It was like kind of just looking at process. So I thought that was something that was missing there. Then over the years, kind of started to test the boundaries of Scrum, or hit up against the boundaries and the ceiling and the walls in Scrum, and experiment with Lean and Kanban. And there was kind of approaches in certain teams that we just got to a point where we felt we couldn't, or that we were being restricted actually within the Scrum time boxes, and we wanted to break out of it, become a bit more open-ended, and looking at our flow metrics and just kind of not being time bound or sprint time box bound. I really felt like kind of a scientist or a kind of an experimenter at that point as an agilist, because you're using a lot of scientific method and scientific approach in terms of baselining your measurements, changing a way of working, and remeasuring and seeing if it had a kind of positive or negative impact. So that was quite nice. And then I've also had worked in large organizations where they had already adopted SAFe. And that's, I suppose, kind of the foundation of this talk really is you might find yourself in a large organization that's already using SAFe. You haven't chosen that, but what do you do? So my initial kind of feelings when I heard about SAFe was just like anger and kind of just like disgust. I couldn't believe it. I was like kind of like, what is this? I'd come from my kind of lean Kanban days where I was trying to get everything down into the small setup. Smaller is better, leaner is better. And this seemed like something that was adding more and more rather than taking things away. So that was my initial impression. And then moved on to actually, there's a few things in here that you can use. There's things that the seeds you can still plant in a safe environment. You can still grow agile in a safe environment. And that's going to be kind of, the gist of what I'm going to talk about today. But anyway, I suppose, to sum up, I'm fairly, kind of fairly agnostic, fairly open-minded, and I think that we can use bits, as long as we're open-minded, we can use bits from any of these things, frameworks, methodologies, as long as we are clear on what problem we're trying to solve. A disclaimer. So, I'm going to talk about SAFe a lot, but I'm not telling you to do SAFe. I'm definitely not telling you to do SAFe. So don't take away that I'm kind of advertising for SAFe, or that I'm telling people that SAFe is what you need to do. This is, as I said, if you find yourself in a SAFe setup, what kind of things can you do? How can you get some shelter from that storm, or something that doesn't maybe resonate with you, or you don't really feel that comfortable with? What can you do? What kind of experience have I had in those situations that I can share with you, and maybe kind of help you think a little bit outside the box? Okay, I'm going to ask for a little bit of participation here. Nothing too crazy, just reactions in terms of emojis. Marmite is a bit of a love and hate thing. Okay. So just want to do some quick fire checks with people as to who likes what and who hates what. Marmite, yeah, do some reactions, give us a comment in the chat or something. Just let us know, do you love it or do you hate it? Well, Simba loves it. Zach loves it. Any haters, any Marmite haters out there? Tom, do you even know what Marmite is? No. Okay, we'll move on and we'll see, if there's anything else that you might, right? How about sour candy? That's also a kind of a divisive one. Okay, so sweet but sour. Sour candy, give us a reaction. Thumbs up, thumbs down, hearts. No, okay, Zach's a lover. Anyone else? These are reactions. Olivier, he's got a thumbs up. He likes sour candy. Okay, we're going to go for another one. I think, Tom, you are going to have an opinion on this one based on your Scandinavian links. Licorice. Where do we stand on licorice? Zach loves all of the things. He's a lover of the strange.
Got an international palate, mate.
International palate. I like it.
Yeah, I worked in Amsterdam. It's famous for its licorice.
Yeah. And then also the one that I probably should have, which is a combination then, is like kind of is salted licorice, right? That's another one that's kind of a niche taste. I suppose what I'm trying to get at here, right, is just there are things that are divisive. Some people love, some people hate. When I did this in an in-person talk at the conference recently, people were making vomiting noises at the back of the conference room to voice their disgust at some of these things. What if I show you this? What's your reactions to the big picture and safe? Any reactions on this? Disgust. Okay. Any lovers out there of the big picture? There's some sadness. This is the one that I find is less divisive at first glance, right? Okay. So similar to my own early experiences with it, it's like, oh my God, why do people want to go down this route? They're completely missing the point. So just one final one. I'm just going to talk about like kind of love and hate stuff as well, right? Is just SAFe is well known for its badges and training and all this kind of stuff. Now I've got two badges here, right, that I own. I don't care about badges really, to be honest. Some people in SAFe collect them like like they're going out of fashion. But we've got an SPC certified, which is a fairly high level SAFe certification. And then on the one on the right here is an IC Agile expert in enterprise coaching badge. Now I've done both of these. The one on the left was really not that difficult to get. The one on the right definitely was difficult to achieve. So for me, that's in the love-hate kind of side of things. The one on the left would be the I hate Marmite, and the one on the right is love Marmite. But reason I'm going to go into this is because that there's a lot of I think there's a lot of stuff around SAFe that is very much like kind of we're going to just test the boundaries. Is it a fact or a myth, right? I already mentioned about the they love a training course and a badge and all that kind of stuff. I think there's a lot of stuff with SAFe where people can start to be practitioners and advanced practitioners really quickly, where without maybe having the necessary kind of skills and experience under the hood, right? So let's dive into a little bit of that, right? What's fact and what's myth? Because in the defense of SAFe, there's also a lot of things said about SAFe that are just plain untrue and wrong, and just people's perceptions. So sometimes perception is based on something valid, but other times it's through ignorance. So let's dig into a little bit of that. So these are things that I've heard people say about SAFe in terms of why they hate SAFe. And some of these might resonate with you, right? I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'll give you a second to kind of just digest some of them. On the right-hand side here, it's just not agile. That's a very common one that I've come across. It was my own response to. There's a lot of things here that people just don't like. Too much jargon, too prescriptive, intense planning days, planning too far in advance. This one, it's too easy for orgs to adopt safe and not change their ways of working. That's one of the kind of biggest ones that you get, right? So I'm seeing people, nodding their heads. But that's one of the things I want to, that's one of the myths I want to bust, right? It is easy, but it's not. It doesn't have to be the way. All right. So then there's things people like about safe. Now, actually, the one on the left here, training, top left, training certifications, you could put on the things that people hate about safe as well, right? The same thing for different people depending on your your perspective. Big room planning. You saw on the last slide, people hated the planning. But there's some people who love the planning, particularly the big room planning. If you've ever experienced it, I think it can be a very positive thing. Some of these things are positive things, but implemented poorly, safe isn't going to give you the solutions that these kinds of things are hinting at. Like for instance, managing dependencies. Safe is really good at, like kind of with the big room planning approach, at highlighting dependencies. But it's up to individuals themselves how they manage those dependencies. So no framework is going to solve that for you. But you would get a lot of people saying things like, oh, it highlights dependencies, but it doesn't solve them. It's like, yeah, there's still work to be done. So this is one of the things that I think with the myths with safe that I think I would challenge. Now, this is a very interesting. So Carl Scotland on the right, if anybody's ever met him before, he's also a fellow co-founder of Lean Agile Brighton with me, and a couple of others. But himself and Joshua Karevsky, they did this fantastic kind of skit video. It's there's a link to it there, which you can get afterwards in the notes for this. But I'd definitely encourage you to have a listen. Starts off really slow, but it's a very dry, very kind of droll skit and kind of satire of safe. And so what they're looking at is they've created their own or Carl has created his own kind of competing framework called SAME. Okay, and you can kind of tell just from the name of it that what he thinks about it, right? So it's very tongue-in-cheek, very funny, but there's a lot of truth in it, right? And these are some of the main takeaways, right? And the things that they're kind of labeling and throwing at safe in the video. It's right. So in reality, people don't have to change anything. Don't have to do any change. You can still claim you're doing agile. Don't change anything. Don't look at the bottlenecks. Just rename things. All of these would be familiar to anyone who's ever worked in a safe environment or has had any kind of dislike of safe. These would be the standard go-to kind of things. Just that you don't have to change things, you just rename them and it keeps everything the same. So definitely recommend that. But I would say that there's a lot of things here are just like, kind of poor implementations. It's like, kind of the framework isn't going to do things magically for you. So any practitioner needs to take any framework or any tool and actually apply it and use it to solve problems. The frameworks are just going to kind of help you so far. They're going to give you some structural elements, some tips, some best some patterns, some best practices, all that kind of stuff, right? You still have to go and apply that yourself, right? It's all well and good knowing being told something on paper, but you still have to go and apply it, and that takes experience and effort and knowledge and know-how and experimentation, right? To just go and try and do some of these things. There's another thing that came out recently as well. This Equal Experts published. I've got a lot of respect for Equal Experts as an organization. They published this blog post where they're saying we don't recommend safe, and that's fine. I'm not recommending safe. But there was a lot of stuff in this blog post in the justification, which I felt was kind of myth. It was like a lot of comments from their clients who had tried safe and their experiences. And again, right, so these are some of them from the article. A lot of these things were things that, again, there's no silver bullet. Safe wasn't going to solve these things for you. You do still have to go and do some work, right? So, for instance, there's a couple of things here about safe didn't create a product-led culture, or you need to be product-centric, but safe is project-centric. It's like, well, no framework's going to do that for you. You need to create your own culture, right? So there's a lot of coaching and a lot of work needs to go into turning a project-centric organization into a product-centric one. Just adopting a framework's not going to do that. Adopting SAFe was supposed to improve the flow of work, but there was no change. It's like, just adopting SAFe isn't going to do that, right? Adopting Scrum isn't going to do it. Adopting any framework isn't going to do that. You still need to do the things that change how you work or change how your teams work in order to see some improvements. So, there's a lot of things on here that I think are myth, and they're valid experiences that people have had with SAFe for sure. But if you are familiar with any of the SAFe material, you will see that none of these things are recommended in the SAFe material. And again, they kind of smelled to me a lot like people looking to blame a poor implementation on the framework, which I don't think was very fair. And that's about as defensive of SAFe as I'll get. That's the whole point of this. Like I am agnostic, and I'm definitely not promoting SAFe, but I think that we should be fair in terms of like just highlighting the fact that a lot of the responsibility is on us as coaches and agilists in how we implement any framework or no framework, how we go about our business and how we go about changing the organizations we work in. So, that's my question really, is who's to blame there, right? Is it the framework? Is it Dean Leffingwell, or is it the people who've implemented the framework, or is it the people who bought the framework thinking that it would just, be a sticking plaster they could put over their existing organization and everything would be agile, pretty soon thereafter. So there's a lot of ignorance in that as a transformation approach, I would say. Any transformation is going to require a lot of hard work to change from old ways of working to new ways of working. So it's, that's what I say. It's just like, I think it was, it's a bit unfair, and the onus is on us to do the work, regardless of the framework. SAFe itself will say it's designed for enterprises and governments at scale. Now, this is an interesting thing, right? It's not saying your goal is to scale up, right? And sometimes people get this wrong. They think that SAFe is encouraging people who adopt SAFe, or organizations who adopt SAFe is telling them to scale, to do big things in a bigger way. No, it's trying to help organizations, enterprises, governments who are already at scale, okay? And so I'm going to talk a little bit now about like what we mean by scale, because a lot of times people who have opinions, they've got a different picture in their head as to what scale is, and what agile is. So we all have different pictures in our head. If you take, if you put 10 agile coaches in a room, ask them what's agile, you'll get 20 responses. So we know this, we know we're all working to different pictures. But I think the scale one is an interesting one to kind of dive into. Okay, so this is, I had a recent holiday in New York, went up the Empire State Building, and I just thought, if I'm going to talk about scale, Empire State Building and King Kong is, kind of a couple of the best metaphors I'm going to be able to get. So it was front of mind at the time. Interesting fact, when I was in the Empire State Building, is they had this little kind of this little section on display where it showed about the building of the Empire State Building back in the 1930s. And so this looks very much like one of our standard incremental delivery kind of slides, right? But this is real life civil engineering project. Now, one of the interesting things about this is that it wasn't just incremental, it was also iterative, because in each of the sections, they had a working building. So even the first one, June 26, 1930, on the far left, that was working building, the bit on the bottom. That segment was a working building, and then they kept building on top, and at each of these stages, they still were using the bits below. So it wasn't just incremental and a big bang opening at the end. They were actually using it in these incremental stages, which I thought was really interesting. Probably not got much to do with this talk, apart from the fact that it's a big building and they used iterative and incremental approach. But as I had King Kong up the Empire State Building there, I thought, I'd share that piece. So let's talk about scale. So this is your standard kind of pattern, right? For anyone who's working in a single Scrum team, for example, or a single Kanban team, a single Agile team. You've got a team of people. You're doing a methodology, you're doing an approach, Scrum, Kanban, whatever it may be. you've probably got a time box of some sort, and you're trying to do small periods of time where you deliver small increments of software, right? Love it. This is the Agile we all know and love, and we all aspire to. And that's great if you can get that. Now, what if you're in a situation where you've got, like, you've got multiple teams, right? So you got 4 teams. All of a sudden, you're trying to balance their concerns, any interactions, dependencies, commonalities, frictions, all this kind of stuff, right? So there's some kind of, all of a sudden doing small Agile is getting just a little bit harder, right? And what if you've got this many teams? It's getting a little bit harder again, right? What if you've got this many teams? What if you've got this many teams? So the point I'm trying to make is, you could enter an organization that has hundreds and hundreds of teams. They are already at scale, okay? Now, to come in and criticize them for adopting a framework that is where they're trying to apply some agility and agile practices across a very big landscape is probably not helpful to them or to you, actually, as if you were a coach and trying to affect change here. So, I found myself in this position. You come in, and they're already doing safe. I wasn't asked. I wasn't there when they decided to go down the safe route. I wasn't there when they decided on that. And I've been in organizations where they've been on the cusp of adopting something like safe, and those decisions get made above your pay grade quite often. So you may not have the influence in very large organizations, or the timing could be wrong. So you might just be landing into a situation where you've got lots and lots and lots of teams. Everybody's trying to do some kind of agile. So here's the thing, right? Is like large enterprises already have all these things in them. Like SAFe isn't giving them this, right? They already have command and control culture. They've already got lots of hierarchies. They've already got lots of dependencies. They've already got monoliths. They've already got projects, and they work in projects, and that's how they do things. They've already got yearly planning cycles. All these things already exist, okay? So SAFe isn't doing this for them, and SAFe's not hiding it for them. The thing is, they're already there. Now, for me, kind of the empathetic way to look at this is when I come into an organization and say, these things exist. They've adopted SAFe because they want to get some level of agility. They want to do some kind of agile ways of working. They, in some cases, there might be a blind, let's adopt SAFe, but in a lot of cases, there are people behind that decision-making who want to get some of the benefits of SAFe. They want to do things in the right way. But the landscape, what they're dealing with, the problem they're dealing with is, or they're trying to solve, is trying to get that done across hundreds and hundreds of teams. It's tricky. So here's what I say, right? Is like, this is my kind of approach, to be honest, right? Was, this is where the Trojan horse thing comes from, right? So if these people, if they want SAFe, if they want agile at scale, then, if they want SAFe, to give them agile. If you find yourself to be a pragmatic agilist and you think that, these people just want SAFe, you have a Trojan horse here in the shape of the scaled agile framework, which has lots of good stuff in it, which we'll dive into in a minute. And you can do good work. This is my point, right? Is like kind of, you could absolutely choose to avoid SAFe environments. You could avoid companies that are doing SAFe, because you think that, oh, I can't do good agile there. But I'm probably here telling you, you can. And there's lots of pockets of things that you can do really good work and apply a lot of good, what you think is good agile. And there's loads of scope for doing it. So we're going to talk a little bit about why that is, right? So, I mean, I think that I put myself in this bracket, and hopefully all of you as well, as pragmatic, agnostic agilists. You're in the belly of the beast in terms of this Trojan horse. And when you get brought inside the camp, then you can still affect good change. So let's talk about that, right? And this bit that says they don't know what they're buying, right? So if they want SAFe, they don't know what they want, right? And a good friend of mine, Dan North, who you may be familiar with, when I spoke to him about some of this stuff, he said, just do what you think is right. You don't have to go by the book and SAFe, because the people who say we want SAFe don't know what they want. They won't know the difference if you do something better. So you have to have that kind of mindset of like, well, look, if there's something in this framework that's useful, I'll use it. But if there's a better way of doing that thing that's in the framework that I know about through my experiences or some other technique or a leaner way of doing this, then feel free to go and kind of apply that, right? Because you are probably more of an expert than the people who are asking you to do it in the first place. There's a great alternative here. If you want to go and look at this article, Dan North and Catherine Kirk in Praise of Swarming. So this is swarming is scaling without a religious methodology, which might be very relevant for folks in this group. You know, it's a kind of some alternative approach there, principle based and value based rather than method based, which makes a lot of sense. Okay, so like I mean, the Trojan horse metaphor, right? I think it works here. Like again, if that's safe, right? If that's the big picture, if that's your if that is the Trojan horse, there's so much in there, right? There's a lot of tools, there's a lot of weaponry in there. People might say, oh, it's terrible. They don't know what they're talking about sometimes because they haven't even gone deeper than you know, just a cursory glance at this. They say, oh, there's too many things on here, this is bad. If you look into it in any level of detail, it's basically one of the things that people complain about SAFe is that it just takes a lot of stuff, it appropriates other people's work. So there's a lot of techniques and good approaches have been appropriated into this big picture. And we'll talk about that in a second, right? Is like what kind of things you can do. Like if there's something that you think is a good thing to do, chances are SAFe have already appropriated it into the toolkit, right? Into this big suitcase. So, hey, it's up to you to go and find it and say, well, you know, I like team topologies. Great, it's in there. Go and find it and find out how you want to apply that. Whatever it might be, right? There's lots of good stuff in there. And it's up to us as practitioners, which bits we take, how we apply any of these bits, and it doesn't have to be by the SAFe book all the time, right? So this is the bit where, you know, I say, you're not there to rebel against SAFe. It's not my place to kind of say, you know, I'm not trying to go rogue or go off piste, but you know, there are things that I know in there where SAFe will have its instructions, you know, it's you know, how to do sprint planning for dummies, steps 1 to 10. And I'll have done that 100,000 times in the past, and I'll know different ways of doing it that are more enjoyable, more effective, more, you know, just better outcomes, right? And people enjoy doing them better. So, you know, I'll do that. I'm still staying within the boundaries and constraints of the framework, because there's always people who will want to try and kind of constrain you to the boundaries of the framework. So you have to test your own boundaries. Now, Home Alone fans out there, I'm a big, massive Home Alone fan, right? So this is the thing, right? It's like Kevin's gutted initially because he thinks he's made his family disappear and he's a bit shocked. But actually, you know, he turns out that's the thing that's like kind of he really wanted, right? He made his family disappear. Now he's free to kind of do what he wants, really, right? So if you think that you want to do certain things you can't do in SAFe, guess what? Have a look at the big picture. Chances are it's in there. Drill down from the big picture and find out if it is in there. And there's things in there that you can use, right? Don't be put off with the first kind of thinking where you might think, I can't do X, Y, Z in a SAFe organization. I definitely have been there myself where I've felt I won't be able to do Agile there. I won't be able to do good Agile there. I won't be able to do my techniques there. And you can. So that's really one of the big takeaways here, right? Now, let's give you a few examples because I want to get to a point where we can do some questions. Here's some examples, right? XP. So I've talked about it at the beginning. If right, the one thing is I am agnostic, but if I had to nail my colors to the mast, I'm an XP guy. But SAFe is one of the few things out there that still refers to XP, right? There's lots of other kind of, you know, thought leadership out there has long forgotten XP or doesn't refer back to it at all. So if you think, oh, SAFe is terrible, you know, it's going to be terrible Agile, but if you're an XP person, you know, or a Kanban or a Scrum, like it says do that stuff. So you've got full license to go and explore that to the nth degree in terms of wherever you want to see that implemented. Lots of people talk about, you know, when you're talking about many teams scaling it at scale, Scrum and Scrum's been a good thing. Like lots of people follow the Spotify model at some point, you know, and Scrum and Scrums and cross-team synchronizations, all that kind of stuff. They're good things to do when you've got lots of teams. You don't go and do it. They call them a different thing in SAFe, but you know, if you like those things, you go and do it. Release planning, right? Multi-release, multi-sprint, multi-team planning. That's a sensible thing to do in the midterm, because we can't just always plan 2 sprints ahead, or 2 weeks ahead, sorry. We can't rely on multi-year plans. We often need things in the middle, right? Which is multi-sprint, multi-team, and that's a good thing to do, right? So they've got PIs, PI planning, release planning is the old name for that kind of stuff. You know, it's in there. If you like it, go and do it. Lots of teams complain that they don't get enough time for innovation or for experimenting. SAFe will say, if you want to do SAFe by the book, it'll say do 5 sprints in the PI and another sprint totally dedicated to planning and innovation, right? It's like the Google 10% time, but it's tacked on to the end of the planning interval. Like, it's there. If you feel that that's the thing that's really kind of missing, then the framework gives you that thing to kind of to use, and you can leverage that, right? Lots of people don't do it, and then they complain like, we're doing SAFe and it stifles innovation. It's like, are you using the IP sprint? No. Well, then why don't you try using it? Lots of people might be familiar with Klaus-Leopold, flight levels. Basically SAFe does the exact same thing. It's called lean portfolio management. If you think that the portfolio level in large organizations is where a lot of this stuff is going wrong, and it's not being managed or it's not being implemented in an agile way, investigate that stuff. It's in there. They say all the right things. There's lots of Kanban at all the levels, at team level, team of teams level, portfolio and initiative levels. It's all about implementation. You can implement any of these things in really good ways. You don't have to just take at face value that you can't do the things that you like to do in a less safe or a less controlled environment. There's loads of room within the framework for us to play here. All these other things on the bottom, team topologies, flow metrics, breaking the annual, yearly and multi-yearly budgeting and planning cycles. That's all wrapped up in lean portfolio management as well, and participatory budgeting. These things are in there. CI/CD, they'll promote that till the cows come home in SAFe. If you think that that's what any organization needs in order to get good at releasing software and get good at being agile, then you can get in there and you can latch onto that and just take it to the nth degree. OKRs, the same. These are just some examples of things that are already in there, and you might not kind of recognize them. So there's probably lots and lots of other things that if you dig in and you click in on any of those bits on the big picture, you'll find there are things in there. I mean, in a lot of cases, what I'm saying here is that, if you find yourself in a position where you do feel bound and constrained, try to release the shackles from yourself and investigate a little bit more. If you feel you can't do certain things, dig a bit deeper into the SAFe guidance. Chances are you've probably got more leeway than you think you have. So takeaways, right? Being courageous, that's one of those things. Don't just accept that you're in a safe environment, they're doing SAFe, I can't do anything here. Being lean within the framework. So there's loads of things in the framework, and there's a lot of prescription around how to do some of the things in the framework. But if you know better, then do it better, right? Do your way. If they've got a 10-step way for doing sprint planning, and you've got a 5-step way, do that. That's leaner, right? They encourage you to be lean with everything in the entire framework. So it's one of the principles, right? Taking an economic view, trying to have a lean mindset, all that kind of stuff. So you can do that. It's just about having the courage to go and do it, and then empowering yourself to be a real change agent. I think I've definitely seen this a lot, where people find themselves in safe environments, in big, large organizations, and they feel that they can't make change happen, that they just have to do SAFe or leave. And I dispute it. I think kind of take it upon yourself to bust the myths, dig a bit deeper, and just look at how do you make change happen, because there's so much scope to still do that. And if you're trying to be client focused, as Simba said at the start around agnostic agile, it's like the customer needs results, they need benefits, they need outcomes, and that's what we're there as coaches to do, right? And as change agents to do, is provide that regardless of what the framework is. So it might be SAFe, it might be something else, but don't be bound by the constraints. And just to leave you on a few kind of nice little kind of sound bites here. So like you meet people where they are, not where you want them to be. So you might want people to be in this, like, much more of an organization that's, going to organically grow into, kind of the picture of Agile that's in your head. But chances are, they're going to be in that scaled environment that has all those anti-patterns and all those dysfunctions that we mentioned earlier. But so you have to meet them there. That's where you arrive. That's where you come in, right? And then the thing is like, you might meet them where they are, but just don't leave them there. So if they're doing safe and they're doing it poorly, and you rock up and you think, hey, I know how to do some of this stuff better, jump in, do that, try and affect those changes, be courageous, and try and move them on a bit from where they are and try and change some of their mindsets and approaches to doing things in that more prescriptive way. And that's it, really. So thank you very much for listening. Definitely want to get into some questions if we've got some now. And there, I'll just leave that for a second if you want to link in with me, and I'm more than happy to catch up if we run out of time on the questions as well. So thank you for listening.
Thanks, Eddie. I think there's already a couple of, were those hands up or claps for the end? If they're hands up, please just jump straight in.
Claps.
Amazing.
Thank you. Very good, Eddie.
Oh, thanks.
There was good chat. Yeah, there was good chat in the chat system, but just to ask again.
I'm just catching up on it now.
At all.
Yeah.
Are there any questions whilst Eddie's going through that? We have a bit of time.
One thing I've always found with SAFe that's missing is the culture.
Yeah. I mean, I've got thoughts on that. I mean, it doesn't tackle it directly. It doesn't tackle it probably at all. You're right, and that is a big section of making any change happen. My experience, you arrive somewhere, it's already got a culture, and the best way, like, it's very difficult to culture hack in a large organization, and I don't think there's any shortcut on it. It's like kind of, it's a long-term thing to move from culture A to culture B. And it's kind of derived by doing things in different ways. Because like for me, I think the simplest way is like with culture is the kind of the things we do around here, right, become our culture. And so we have to change those things and do that lots and lots of times over a period of time before the culture changes. And it's often very difficult to even observe and see, kind of, because you have to take pulse checks. You're not going to see those changes on a day-to-day basis. They're like kind of almost yearly kind of differences. SAFe doesn't tackle it at all.
Happened a lot faster. The last SAFe implementation I was involved with was a German company that had bought by Kohlberg Kravis Roberts, the asset strippers. So they'd gone in with the American gung-ho way of working with Germans coming together in their, I think they had about 120 doing SAFe. First time it didn't work, so you take it in again. And what we found was that there was ways of doing culture at a team level, a very simple method to measure it and to get it and to increase people's awareness, which I found was a lot faster than the way that SAFe goes.
Yeah, well, SAFe doesn't tackle it at all. You're right. I mean, it's there's other things you need to do, but I think any lasting culture change is going to take a while to get to, and it's about like kind of how you change the things you do that ultimately affect the culture that you have. I think
things that were coming up on the cultural level was that with SAFe being kind of strategic, top-down way of working, when we were doing the big room planning, a lot of the developers didn't have the confidence to go and speak to the senior managers as to what they wanted. They didn't want to appear to look thick or to ask the wrong questions. So there's a technique called lean scenes. I don't know if you've come across them yet. So they're a kind of internal story that gives a developer's perception of a problem and 2 levels above it to show the benefits to senior and masters to do it. And finally, with it being Germany, the way that you laid out your journey from XP to SAFe reminds me of the way that music has developed over the years. But I've got this strange condition where I see project management methodologies as being similar to musical genres. It was published in Forbes, and I know that this is your talk, but if I can pop the link in the chat.
Yeah, go for it, mate. Yeah, sounds fun.
And most people think that the way that I've defined safe is absolutely spot on.
Yeah, I'd be interested. I mean, as I said, I'm not promoting or defending it. It's more about like kind of if you find yourself there, like, you know, what can you do if you're inside, if you're in the belly of the beast.
I will let other people talk, but if there's time at the end, I'll come back because it was safe haven that attracted me to this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where the next version of Agile is going to go.
Mm. Yeah, I often think about, I mean, that's what this kind of is originating from. I think, you know, kind of for Agilists, often there's a lot of, you know, it can be a lonely place trying to get your ways of working across and your ideas across in large organizations. And sometimes like if you feel like you're banging your head against a brick wall, or
that's exactly what Aline
pushing upstream.
Yeah.
So you need a bit of like kind of where's the safety here, or where's the haven? Where can I get some respite, and how can I do the stuff that I want to do?
Safe haven is a game metaphor for rounders rather than scrum. So rounders, softly, cricket are safe haven games because you pitch and catch going from place to place.
Cool.
And getting
Didn't know
it.
that. Yeah,
and that ties into the technique. The guys that invented Scrum were Nanaka and Takuchi, the Japanese guys in the new product game.
Mm-hmm.
And 10 years after that, they brought out a new methodology called Seki, which is all about socializing ideas, which follows a diamond shape as if it's a baseball field. So
I need to look into that. Those guys love to use a sports metaphor, don't they?
Sorry to interrupt, but just to squeeze in one last question. I think we have 2-3 minutes. Thank you for that, Zach, and please do.
Sorry, I thought you were going to 7.
And oh no, it's we did say the hour, didn't we?
Yeah, I can stay on for another few minutes. There's no hassles. Yeah, we get some good questions we can help through.
Absolutely, there was a great question in the chat. Just wanted to give the opportunity to for your response, Eddie.
Yep. Which one?
Was the latest one by Olivier?
Oh, around.
I said that very wrong, didn't I? Please forgive me.
Okay, so trains. Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just about train. Very often I notice that safe trains are not very consistent. Very often, trains are just kind of a patchwork or different activities. And in this case, it's not a very good beginning for safe implementation, but very often it's the case. And I think it's not easy, I think, for companies, for big companies to modelize or to conceive a consistent train with a real business project, a real business purpose goal.
Yeah, so I think, well, one thing, I mean, do they need to be consistent would be one question. I mean, we all like consistency, but I've worked in large organizations with various sizes and shapes of train, and I think that's okay. I've got a high tolerance for variability myself, but not everybody does. So, no, the thing is, for me, is like with a train, like there's a great example here of like, you know, kind of there will be a by the book safe approach to doing this. You know, which will be very, you know, like do this, determine your value stream, who's on the development value stream, who's on the operational value stream. It'll be very methodical. For me, a train is it's a team of teams, right? And any team of teams needs to have a common concern or a common purpose or a common goal or something that they are all pulling towards. Otherwise, what's the point in being in a team of teams construct? So for me, that's where I start. It's like, you know, kind of like what's the common thing that we're all pulling towards, right? Because I've seen situations where you have, you know, 10 teams on a train and there's no dependencies. They're all working on different products or applications. there's no overlap. It's like, well, why are you on a train then? Because actually in that situation, you could break that train construct and actually you're working in a much leaner way, right? Now you've all of a sudden, you've got that leaner kind of like team-based agile, right? You've got 10 teams doing, you know, their own little kind of organic agile implementation, which is lovely. But sometimes you go into places and they want the train and it's like, oh, we've got 10 teams, let's put them on a train. It's like, you don't have to. I've also seen situations where you've got one team and they put them on a train. It's like, what are you doing? Or they've got two teams and they put them on a train. What are you doing? So really it's about the purpose. What's, you know, why do we need a team of teams construct, regardless of whether we're doing safe? What is the purpose? What are we all pulling towards in the end? And I think once you answer that, the rest of it becomes easier. I'll also draw attention to that team topology stuff then, because, you know, what kind of teams do you have on a train? If you have a valid team of teams and you've got like kind of, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams that are what they call stream aligned, you know, they're working on a product or they're delivering for a customer facing product or an application or something like that, right? They're actually getting physical, tangible stuff out. And then you can have like platform teams that are helping all of those teams to deliver, right? Like an enabler team as well, right? Or a platform team who are doing things. If each team on the train was trying to solve those problems themselves individually, you would get like, you know, kind of an architectural mess. You'd get a lot of duplication of effort, all that kind of stuff. So sometimes you want to make sure that when you're designing that train, if there are commonalities across those teams, that you have got teams that are platform teams or enabler teams who are helping everybody deliver. Which sometimes like we kind of like the idea in Agile of having like full stack team, vertical slice teams who can deliver independently of everybody else. But in a large organization, sometimes, you know, it does pay to have those teams who are helping everybody deliver, like build something once on the platform and then everybody uses it rather than building it multiple times in different ways. So yeah, start with the purpose would be my thing, and then apply some good solid organizational design approaches to your teams and team structures that are on there.
Thank you.
Does that make any sense? Is there any other questions on there? Probably got time for one more. Some good comments on there. Sorry to hear that there was something stolen from Tom and appropriated into
I think there was a question around Google ChatGPT and safe.
Yeah. Where was that? Struggling to find that. Hang on.
613.
13.
So it's from
yeah. Google or ChatGPT, an alternative to safe to find good ideas, maybe better. So yeah, interestingly, Safe has launched its own alternative Copilot kind of thing, Safe Copilot. I haven't used it much, but it's really as a way of getting information. Like these chatbots are a nice way of kind of, you know, you pump in a safe question, you get the canon back, right? You know, kind of this is what sources say, rather than having to drill down and find the right thing in the safe framework or in documentation yourself. So I do like that that kind of approach, to be honest. I'd also love a situation where so I'm an agile coach in a big organization with lots of people who want to ask me questions on things, right, and clarify things, and I can't always service them. And in some cases, I would love if they would be able to use something like these bots just to get some of those high-level answers themselves. A little bit of kind of user beware would need to apply in that, because the thing is you could ask a bot, you know, oh, how should I do sprint planning? And people will ask these things, very open-ended questions, right? And they're not like Boolean responses. And would they be able to spot a bad result or a bad response? I don't know. So there's a little element of like, I'd love the idea of it reducing my workload from a pure query kind of answering perspective. But I think there's a little bit of like, you kind of need the other kind of, you know, the angel and the devil on the shoulder saying like, you kind of tell me what's the answer, but this other person saying like kind of, yeah, but it's an okay answer, but you might also want to think about it. So there's always like kind of still coaching opportunities. It's very difficult, like even if you just Google stuff, you know, kind of how much do you trust and how much can you understand enough the answer to apply it. So it's tricky. I will say definitely I have liked its ability for a bot to troll the information for me. But when it comes back, I can then apply my experience to the answers. I would love if that was true for everybody who uses it. Definitely something promising in there, though, I think, hopefully. Because it could actually potentially do away with the people who have just got the badge and not the experience. If you think about it, right? It could be people who just read the book and do the course and spit back what the book says. Like they're kind of contributing to the problem we're seeing with SAFe. So actually, if they were removed by a bot, I wouldn't lose any sleep on that personally. Apologies if anyone else is thinks that they're in that bracket and they're worried about losing their job. Do something different so that you add more value and that you're actually irreplaceable would be my advice on that then.
I think that's a perfect conclusion there. and also yeah, that in itself is its own conversation and own topic, so I'd really enjoy that one to continue potentially. But for now, slightly over time, but it was really valuable questions and answers there. So thanks for the time, Eddie, and of course to be respectful for everyone else's time. So I think it's customary to have an awkward round of applause, so I'm just going to do that. And thank you all. We'll close there.